Okay. All right.
Good evening and welcome to the Beverly School Committee Subcommittee for
Oops,
Curriculum
I'm not
Instruction
getting-
and Student Life.
Are you green out there? Are you green? Oh,
Try again.
okay.
Good evening and welcome to the Beverly School Committee Subcommittee for Curriculum Instruction and Student Life. Today is Wednesday, November 15th, 2023, and we are meeting in a hybrid model today using a hybrid meeting application allowing for remote participation and for public access to the open portions of our meeting. We are being recorded by the platform. On June 16th, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and on many occasions extended provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely. Now, our current governor and legislature extended further 2 years until March 31st, 2025. These acts specifically suspend the need for a quorum and a chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation, although through that permission, the chair and a quorum will need to be physically present when this act and its extension expires. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. We will conduct a roll call attendance in a moment for the record, since the meeting application sometimes does not display all participants. Please remember that any audio video you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record. As such, please be sure to mute to prevent further background noise. I would now like to conduct a roll call vote to make sure that you can see, to make sure you can hear me and that we can hear you this evening. So we have President Rachel Abel.
Present.
Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Yes.
Dr. Dorothy Flaherty.
Here.
Kate Twombly.
Here.
Dr. Suzanne Shirocek.
Here.
Lorigan Sudak. See her. She's on. I see the green, so. Allison Driscoll. See her. Laura Clanton Bolden.
This line. Is that what you're saying? Or she can't hear us?
We can't hear them.
Can't hear
No.
them.
We see,
Audio's not muted.
is Lauren on there?
Laura was not.
Lauren, oh, Laurel. Eleanor Corbett. Let's see. No. Sadie Brennan? Okay. Finn Kohler Ovitt. Dante Shaw Espinal. And Althea Pizzini Gross. Absent.
We are also joined by Mr. Mark Thomas, Bethany Spolansky, and then the others are just repetitive for Dr. Trocek and Dr. Flaherty.
Okay. Okay. Before I turn the meeting over to Dr. Flaherty, I would like to ask President Abel to lead us in the pledge.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
They still can't hear?
Okay, Lorigan says she can hear us.
Oh.
Yeah. Maybe one of our remote participants can try again. It just said that you muted.
I'm not muted.
You're not muted.
Someone on here could hear us, though?
They can hear us, we just can't hear them. It looks like Lorigan is trying to speak to us. She came off mute. It's not coming through.
It's not coming through to them. Or
To
you
us,
can't.
to us, we can't hear them.
Well, all right. I mean, the TV's volume's up. Can't be any more up than that.
That's just me unmuting,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're going through.
Last night, and Ed was here, so I don't know if he did something different. I'll try to.
Okay. Yep, so it looks like the folks that are participating remotely will use the chat function. Okay? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Our agenda this evening is relatively short because we do have a
The-
long.
The microphone? Thank you.
Is relatively short, with the exception if we get into any discussions with policy, and you never know which way that's going to go, so I built in time for a conversation. We'll be doing the minutes, and we do have an amendment to the minutes that I will ask you to make in a few moments. We'll have the best part of our meeting, which is hearing from our students. I'll give you a brief overview of a very busy professional development day on Election Day. And then we have 5 policies to take a look at. And then we would like to invite any of the CISL members that would like to stay for school committee. We will be doing our annual overview of the MCAS results. So I'd like to start the meeting. There's an amendment that I'd like to ask for in the minutes. The policy that we approved and the body of the language that we approved at the last meeting was for policy JRA, which is student records. But in the, on the slide, it was mislabeled, and in the minutes, it is labeled as JRD, student photographs. But everything that we discussed and voted on was the accurate information, so we just need the minutes to reflect that the approval should have, recommendation to school committee for first reading should read for policy JRA, student records, and not policy JRD, student photographs.
I will make a motion that we approve the meeting records with the correction JRD, student records.
No, JRA.
JRA, sorry, I was reading it again. JRA for student records.
There's been a motion, is there a second?
Second.
We lost the feed. The motion's been made and seconded. Take a vote. Isabel, can you call a roll of the members present?
I'll call the roll.
Okay.
Okay. Rachel Abel,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Kate Twombly,
Yes.
Lorigan Sudak. Can't really.
She said yes in the chat.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, they can still hear us.
Allison Driscoll,
Yes in the chat.
Laura Bolden is absent. Finn Kohler Ovitt. Dante Shaw Espinal. Eleanor Corbett is absent. Sadie Brennan is absent. Oh, I'm sorry, she's on there. She said yes in the chat? Okay. And Althea is absent. And Karen Robinson, yes. Okay, so the motion has passed.
Thank you very much. I would now like to request a motion to approve the amended minutes for the meeting held on October 10th, 2023.
Motion?
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's been a motion made and seconded. Could you call a roll call
Yeah.
vote?
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Kate Twombly,
Yes.
Lorigan Sudak,
Yes in the chat.
Allison Driscoll,
Yes in the chat.
Rachel Abel,
Yes.
Finn Kohler-Albert,
Yes.
Dante Shaw Espinal, and Karen Robinson, yes.
Sadie Brennan.
And Sadie Brennan.
Yes in the chat.
Okay. And the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we'd like to hear from our most important constituents and stakeholders, our students. And I'd like to ask Finn to come up and tell us about what's going on in the middle school. Just push the button so the green light comes on.
Okay. So, a lot has been happening at BMS. The cross-country season ended well, with many students breaking their beginning of season times by as much as 15 minutes. We recently had a Veterans Day assembly, where our chorus, strings, and band each performed the songs they'd been rehearsing. We also had a special guest from the military join us that day. Our students have been practicing very often for the CISL the musical coming up in the beginning of December. They have the set mostly done and have practicing going off script at their rehearsals. Also, the 8th grade has begun fundraising for their international trips to Puerto Rico and Quebec City. This will likely continue until early spring of 2024, near the time of the trips.
Do you know the dates of the musical yet? I might want to put it on my calendar. Dante, do you know? Thank you.
The dates for Musical Musical are December 9th, which is a Friday, and December 8th, which is a Friday, and December 9th, which is a Saturday.
Great show. I hope we have a big turnout.
In the past month, a lot has happened at BMS. The North Shore Essex Technical High School came into BMS for an assembly to show a presentation about their services they offer. A couple weeks after, some high school representatives from BHS came in to show the students programs and services they also have. One 9th grader and one 10th and two 12th graders came in to explain their experiences from different grade points. Coming up later next week is a cross-gender flag football tournament for all 8th graders to attend that will begin Monday the 20th to Wednesday the 23rd of November. For Spanish class students who were chosen for the Puerto Rico trip on April vacation, their supply gathering has started and they have already had their first informational meeting. Further meetings are held either virtually or in person on Mondays further out. For French class students, they are preparing for their Quebec trip also in April.
8th grade is such a busy, exciting year, isn't it? Are there any questions for our middle school students? Thank you for keeping us abreast of everything that's going on.
Okay.
I hope we see a lot of musical. And now I'll move to the high school and ask Sadie if she can. I don't know if they're
Okay, that's it. If
All right,
we
Sadie,
can't
we're
hear
gonna move
them,
on
will
to the
that be all
policies,
right?
but if we get the volume fixed, then we'll have you share the news at the high school before the end of the meeting.
And they just, Lorgan just
They can
put in
hear
the chat
us.
that they lost sound.
Is the sound back? I just removed BevCam and returned them to the room.
I mean, nothing's coming through here at all. That's where we should hear them.
Oh, you're on mute.
The TV says it's on mute. That's
Oh, the TV's on mute.
No, your computer's on mute.
this is recording.
Test them again.
Okay, now we're testing one more time off of mute. We can see you're trying to talk, Lorgan, but we're not hearing you still.
I don't know how to get them.
She said they can hear us though.
Well, that's probably the most important thing, if they can,
Well, except for Sadie. That's her high school update. But if it comes back, we will come back to you before the end of the
Ready?
meeting.
Can I read it for Sadie?
Oh, thank you, Sadie.
I'll pretend to be Sadie. Hello, everybody. I apologize for my absence tonight. However, I do have some updates on a few events that are happening soon at BHS. There is a Powder Puff game tomorrow night in Salem where the senior girls of Beverly will take on the senior girls of Salem in a match of football. Spirit Week is coming up this next week at the high school. The themes are USA, Country, and Panther Pride. Boys varsity soccer made it to the Elite Eight, or the semifinals, this year in their playoffs, and winter sports tryouts are coming up right after Thanksgiving break. And thank you, Sadie, that was a great job.
Thank you on such a quick pivot there. That is definitely great flexibility. Thank you, Sadie, for your great pivot and fast thinking of typing it into the agenda. Thank you. Now we will move on, and I'll give you an update of Election Day. It was very busy throughout the whole district. We actually stayed building-based this year, which led to some interesting challenges that our tech team helped us to work through, because we were very, very fortunate to be able to have a nationally recognized author and speaker speak to both the pre-K, actually, that should say pre-K, because they were with us as well, through 8, and then did a second talk to the targeted for the high school staff. She is the author of 2 books. One is The Knowledge Gap, which is we've been working on trying to build a more knowledge based curriculum as we're moving forward. And she is one of the leading experts in that area, and she spoke to our pre-K through 8 staff. She was a very wonderful, and we had a lot of great feedback. A lot of our elementary teachers had described that they felt very validated about all the work that they've been doing over the last 2 years. And she gave some really great insight for our middle school staff that is just delving into the knowledge-based curriculum and trying to pick their literacy program, and the 5th grade, who is currently doing Wit and Wisdom, about what the early steps of this change, because it is a major change in philosophy. And then for the high school, Natalie presented around the writing revolution, and it really is a wonderful approach of thinking about writing across all content areas. And I'll highlight, this is not the only thing the high school did, but I tried to pick one area from each of the grade level spans that I was at. One of the great things that they did was that after the presentation, they actually did a debrief with all of their content areas, and it was led by the humanities department, the English and social studies teachers, around how we should be writing in all of our content areas. And I think that from what I heard, Mark, it was well received. And our real focus across the district is improving and enhancing and increasing the amount of writing that our students are doing, and this will certainly have an impact on that. In some of our other buildings, we had Ed Camp style workshops. They all had a debrief on whichever session that they listened to for Natalie Wexler, and then they had kind of Ed Camp sessions where teachers could choose which session they went to. They were all content driven with either math, focusing on making thinking visible in math and making much more hands-on, higher level thinking, puzzle talks, so that students are struggling and working to solve problems together collaboratively. And in ELA, most of the ed camps were around writing or lesson reviews for Wit and Wisdom with their grade level peers. We also had a great session at 2 of the schools on trauma-sensitive classrooms and ways to increase a sense of belonging for students in the class or in the school, and in meeting students where they are so that they're able to be open for learning that day. We also have implemented a rubric for teachers to use to help judge the cultural responsiveness of instructional materials that they are bringing in, supplemental to what we provide as the core curriculum. So if they're bringing in a video clip or a magazine article or a separate book that isn't in the core curriculum, we're asking everybody to use this rubric to judge the cultural responsiveness. Now, that doesn't mean that if something scores low and is not culturally responsive, that it can't be used. That a lot at the high school, if they're using primary sources, they may not be, but then it's going to raise the flag to say, well, how are we presenting additional perspectives or additional thoughts on a topic? And all of the schools have to review it before Thanksgiving, and I think at this point, this day was the last day. If they hadn't already done it at faculty meeting, they used this day to spend some time working with their staffs. There was also workshops around instructional strategies. Scaffolding is a instructional strategy that we're saying from the district level needs to be used across every classroom. So there was some work on scaffolding, purposeful planning, group instruction, small group instruction. And then, as you know, we've had a multi-year partnership with ECLC. They ran a regional conference up in Amesbury at Amesbury High School. And we had some of our specialist teachers and our paraprofessionals attend the conference there with also very good feedback from them. So this is just a snapshot of what was a very busy day, and we successfully kept all of our faculties in our buildings, which made it much easier for them to be able to access materials and feel comfortable in their day because they were in their own space, and while keeping the parking lots open for voting. So that went successfully. I know that's something that you all spoke about recently at your retreat. So any questions about the PD Day? Okay. So we have 5 policies to take a look at this evening, and we are still tweaking to find the best way to do the track changes. But for updates, when you're looking at this, when you see the red, if there's a line through it, that means that it's in our Beverly policy, not in the MASC policy. And if you see red lettering that is underlined, that is MASC policy languages. But I've done a slide for each of the policies that we're looking at today. I'll give you a brief overview of the changes, and then we will need a motion to move it forward for a first read to the school committee. So our first policy that we're looking at is JRD, student photographs. We're recommending that we keep all of our own red line language, which is the Beverly language. We want to keep our own language in the policy, except in a couple of places where we will specifically note below. We also want to keep some of the red that you see. So for an example, in the first paragraph, you'll see that there's a line through schools, which was our language, and then you see right next to it the word schools underlined. That's just a formatting difference. It's either a difference in spacing or style.
It's the curly apostrophe versus the straight apostrophe.
Oh, is
It
that what
drives
it
me
is?
crazy between Google
So,
Docs and Word.
In the future, we're going to try to just take all the formatting stuff out, and we will always stay with the Beverly formatting. And then that will be a lot less red for you to look at. The more substantive changes is in the second paragraph, second sentence. After the words parents, this has been consistent in the policies we've reviewed to this point. We want to add the language guardians/caregivers to be more inclusive. And similarly, in paragraph 2, third sentence, we want to change the language from his/hers to their to be more inclusive. And then on the bottom, the third bullet, we again want to add the words guardian and caregivers after the word parent.
I would like to make a motion that the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life recommend the changes and edits as shown in the red track changes for policy JRD, student photographs, to go forward to the school committee for a first reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, Ms. Robinson, can you call a roll?
Yes. Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Twombly?
Yes.
Lorigan Sudak?
Yes in the chat.
Allison Driscoll?
Yes in the chat.
Laura Bolden is absent. Rachel Abel,
Yes, please.
Finn Kohler-Ovitt, Dante Shaw Espinal, Sadie Brennan.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion's passed.
Thank you. Our next policy is policy EB, Safety Program. The recommendation is that we, again, keep the redlined language, except where specifically noted, as this is the Beverly's current policy. And then in the first paragraph, second sentence, we recommend that we remove the language, take every possible precaution, and replace it with the MASC language, which is guard against such occurrences by taking precautions. In the second paragraph, we recommend that we change the word plant, which is Beverly language, to the MASC language, which is facility. It's just a word change. Similarly, in the fourth paragraph, we recommend the word change from system to district. And then at the end, we keep the source section, but that it says that we've used both MASC and Beverly references.
May I ask a question before we make the
Yes.
motion? In the version that I printed out, it strikes through railroad crossings.
We're leaving railroad crossings in.
Leave that in,
Because that's
okay.
specific, that's Beverly language, and we're keeping all of the
Beverly has the
language.
most per capita.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make that motion that the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction, Student Life recommend the changes and edits on policy EB safety programs to go forward to the school committee for its first reading.
The motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Robinson, may you call the roll?
Yes, Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Twombly,
Yes.
Sudak,
Yes.
Ms. Driscoll,
Yes.
Ms. Abel,
Yes.
Finn Kohler-Ovitt, Dante Shaw Espinal, Sadie Brennan,
Yes.
and Karen Robinson, yes. Thank
That's
you.
unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move that forward to the school committee for a first read. There are two policies that go hand in hand. One is the actual policy, and then one is an addendum that was recommended from MASC. The recommendation is that we do adopt both the policy and the addendum. And when I first read it, my first inclination was to say, oh, we're not going to need this. Hopefully, we don't ever need remote learning again, because we're thinking about it as the pandemic. But as you read the policy, it actually makes a lot of sense. And the key point is made in the first paragraph when they talk about the fact that this could come into play for disease, but also for weather emergencies, destruction, or damage rendering them in buildings inaccessible, or other extraordinary circumstances, including emergencies declared by government officials, the school committee, or the superintendent. In that light, it would be good to have this in place if and when we ever need it.
May I ask a question before we entertain a motion? On the list of cross-references, are each of those in our policy book, or do we need to double-check them?
I do not know the answer to that yet. But we can check to remove any of them before it goes forward to school committee.
Okay, so that would be my qualifying statement.
Okay. Okay, I would like to make the motion that the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life recommends the adoption of MASC policy and policy addendum IHBHE and IHBHE-E to go forward to the school committee for its second reading.
With the codicil that we will remove any of the cross-references that
Yes.
are not currently in our policies.
Thank you.
And I can get behind that with a second.
Okay, I'd like to call the roll. Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Twombly,
Yes.
Ms. Sudak,
She said
She
yes.
said yes.
Ms. Driscoll,
Yes.
Ms. Abel,
Yes.
Finn Kohler-Ovitt, Dante Shaw Espinal. Sadie Brennan.
Yes.
And Mrs. Robinson, yes. Motion passes 9-0.
Okay, and our last policy for review this evening is ACAB, which is harassment. This was a title change that was made in the last review, and our attorneys removed the word sexual from the policy title, because it's broader than that. If you see, the whole first page is redlined. This is Beverly-specific language. This is not in the MASC policy, but we recommend keeping all of the redlined information on the first page and the top of the second page. We will maintain the Beverly formatting in all of the policies. On the top of the second page, there is a new paragraph that we would recommend that we include that says and we would include Beverly School Committee and Beverly Public Schools are committed to maintaining an education and work environment. And that goes until the end of the paragraph that ends with public schools.
May I ask for a request before
Yes.
this moves forward, assuming it passes? Can we fix the track changes so it's more evident what is Beverly's that we're keeping?
Yes.
I was using an italics, not strike through for that on mine, but we can figure out best practice. I think when I first saw this and I saw all of this deletion,
So did I.
I was panicked because I know how long we worked with our attorneys to get
do
it
that.
right when we adopted it. And then I was recalling the change in the title that we intentionally made as well. So you can go ahead and make the motion. I'll second it with that request.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion that, including President Abel's request, that the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life recommends the changes, edits on policy ACAB, harassment, to go forward to the school committee for its first reading.
And that would include the other bullets that are on the
Yes,
screen. Okay.
as recommended by the assistant superintendent, and I will second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, could you call a roll, Ms. Robinson?
Yes. Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Twombly?
Yes.
Ms. Sudak?
Yes.
Ms. Driscoll?
Yes.
Ms. Abel?
Yes.
Finn Kohler-Ovitt? Dante Shaw Espinal? Sadie Brennan?
Yes.
And Karen Robinson, yes.
Thank you. The policy will be moved along to the school committee for its first reading. Any questions on any of the topics that we had this evening? Dr. Silva?
So in the first reading, a clean version will be presented, is that right?
Yes. So it doesn't go to the first reading this evening, right? When we report out for committee, it would be at the next meeting.
No, this will get onto the next agenda.
We'll clean all that up, and you'll see
Already.
the clean copies when they come out to you.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, I would just like to, before we adjourn the meeting, wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope that you have some time to enjoy with your families over the break. And just know that I personally, but also on behalf of the superintendent and I, would like to express our gratitude during the Thanksgiving season for each of you that volunteer your time and come to help us make some important decisions for curriculum and instruction in the Beverly Public Schools. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. No discussion on the motion. Can you please call a roll, Ms. Robinson?
Yes. Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Twombly?
Yes.
Ms. Sudak?
Yes.
Ms. Driscoll?
Yes.
Ms. Abel?
Yes.
Finn Kohler-Ovitt? Dante Shaw Espinal? Sadie Brennan?
Yes.
And Karen Robinson, yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for those.
Come join us for the MCAS presentation.
Yes, we're going to probably log out of this and try to log back in before the next meeting. If you want to rejoin for the CISL, the MCAS presentation.
Okay, you're on.
Testing, testing. Testing, testing, testing.
Nobody's on, right? So,
Yeah.
So
I think it's picking it up because my. Oh, do I have a microphone? No, I'm muted. So it must be coming through here. So if I. Testing, testing, testing.
how about that? Just tried a different setting. Well, regardless, people can hear us. That's the important thing. It's noise.
Well, no, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza will be at home.
Is she on yet?
Not yet.
Changing things. But I'm still not communicating according to you. Or am I still at 2 o'clock? Okay.
Bethany, if you can hear me, can you respond? Okay, but we can't hear you. Okay. I can hear you through my iPad, but not through the computer monitor.
I tried another one. If you could ask her again.
Right. Bethany, can you hear us now? It's only coming through here. We know you're making sound, but you're not making sound on the big TV in the library, so we're trying to troubleshoot this.
Ever try that?
Can you try again? Only on my iPad. This one's almost redone. I think I'm going to end this session and restart it. Apologies if you have to join again. Let's see, how do I even end it? I can't even find. Testing. I can see that you're talking, Bethany, but it's not coming through. If we can have a meeting, let's see. Okay. Okay, we'll table it then. Okay. Apologies, we're gonna wait just a minute for the technology to catch up with us and get it so that we can have our remote member participate. Is that just your music?
No, I shut the music off. I have
Yeah.
microphones on. You want me to
Well, so when I have this, it says it's you,
hear through there?
but I
Yeah.
can hear it through there, but I can't hear it through
I
here.
know, I can't get audio through this.
And you're sure that the audio out is going to the cart?
It is. I tried 2 or 3 others. If you can see those choices, that's how I have it on down here.
Maybe try same system, because it says library cart and
So this one here, I think I've tried that twice already, but I'll try it again. Okay.
Testing, testing.
Well, we're not getting any looping. We would at least get that, I would think.
Right. Ms. Hart or Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, can you try talking to us one more time?
Yeah, nothing.
I can only hear you on my iPad. I can't hear you on the cart in the library here, so.
I mean, I could.
How about try leave computer audio and then join again? You see that
Computer
choice?
audio
Yeah.
and join the
And
meeting
then-
again?
Well, or yeah, leave the whole meeting and join again. I'm still stuck at 98 on my computer, but. I just saw you were talking, but I can't hear you. Yeah, you can hear us though, right? I can only hear you through my iPad. We're not hearing you through BevCam. BevCam actually just left. They're going to rejoin to see if they can get the audio to work again. So you probably can't hear me because BevCam left, and that's how I was talking to you before. I'm going to try to admit. Yeah, but it's through my iPad, and it's not loud at all. So we're just trying to have BevCam rejoin and see if the audio will work.
Okay, I've rejoined.
Okay, we're testing again through the BevCam audio. No, it's only through the iPad.
Kenny is saying she can hear us.
She can hear us, and I can hear on the iPad, but it's not coming through this, even though BevCam is picking up my audio because I'm muted on my iPad.
Those are the settings on the lower left. I haven't changing from the last time.
Yeah, so library cart, same as system.
There's not many choices. I mean,
No.
I can try to test speaker and microphone. I don't know what that's gonna do.
The speaker, yeah, test the speaker. Figure out where your sound is going.
Do you hear a ringtone, it says?
We're not getting a ringtone. See, I went through that drill a little
No,
earlier.
it says no, try another speaker. No,
That, I chose the library card and still
no,
nothing.
no, try the built-in speaker. Try. Okay, so that's just going to your laptop.
That's my laptop, right?
Yeah. It's just his laptop that time. You can broadcast us this at least. And maybe we can have, we just have speakers that are remote, so. I mean, I could try to,
We could try that.
is that going through?
Well, she would have to say
Yeah.
something. Someone would have to say something.
No, it's just
it'll loop.
looping, it's looping.
Well, running out of thoughts.
Yeah. Anybody else IT Zoom savvy?
I've reached out to the girl that would help us. She lives in Haverhill. And I tried everything she suggested. So we had the Varian meeting last night, the Varian,
I'm on my school
Toxic.
account. And he's
Site.
on his BevCam account, but he's through the
Right.
web.
it was just a presentation. They just connected and made a presentation. It wasn't even hybrid.
I can try texting him.
But they can hear us, so that's good. It's just that some of these folks,
Yeah, is Megan going to be presenting?
She is not presenting.
She's not presenting.
answer.
So Dr. McKenzie, we might just need you to pop up the chat if you want to convey something, or I can kind of listen on my iPad. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go forward with that.
just in case.
I think I'm finally.
I texted him, I'll see. I just asked him his name.
You want to try to go?
Yeah, I'm gonna let the mayor come over, and I'm also going to just log in on my laptop to host. Let's see if that will help.
Sorry, folks. Technology.
My laptop just went black, so.
So it's not, is it trying to boot up after that?
Yeah, and it said it had, and I put in my password, and then it just went. Okay, we'll just keep with the iPad, and we'll just go. We'll roll with it.
You're on.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the technological delay. We are trying to troubleshoot while we run a meeting. It is Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. This is a regular school committee meeting of the Beverly Public Schools. I wanted to mention that we are attempting to meet in a hybrid remote model today using a remote meeting application that is provided for no cost to our district. Oh well. And this allows for public access to open portions of our meeting. We are as well being recorded and streamed by our friends at BevCam. On June 16, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and on February 12th and again on July 16, 2022, he extended provisions which, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. Now, our current governor and the legislature has extended a further 2-year opportunity for us to continue until March 31st, 2025. These acts specifically suspend the need for a quorum in the chair to physically be present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation, although through that permission, the chair and quorum will be physically present when and if this act expires. Tonight is a regular school committee meeting, which means we do have the opportunity to address the body. For public comments, we would ask that you send your thoughts prior to the meeting to residentvoice@beverlyschools.org or appear in person and sign your name on the log that is at that microphone. Or you can request a link to this meeting in advance. Remember, please, that this is an opportunity to address the body and we will not offer a reply. Also, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And I would add a caveat that we do not speak about specific students or personnel. Joining us today are members of the school committee, various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will conduct a roll call attendance in a moment so that we have that. Even though our meeting does not always display everyone, we would ask that you use the mute functionality to avoid any background noises, as it will become part of the meeting record. Okay, so let's conduct the roll call. I'll start first with our remote participants. We have Megan Hart, principal at Ayers.
Here, thank you.
Okay. We have Miss Bethany Splansky, our Director of Pupil and Special Education. I have to really memorize these really long titles. It's like 8 years. Yes. We are also joined remotely by Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza.
Here.
Okay, and I can hear her on the iPad, so I'll be relaying any conversations that we need to impart. In the room, we have Mayor Michael Cahill,
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Coelho,
Here.
Ms. Karen Robinson,
Here.
Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
I'm Rachel Abel, and we are expecting Ms. Visnick shortly after 8 o'clock. Also in the room, we have our superintendent, Dr. Suzanne Jurocek.
Here.
Our executive secretary, Ms. Donna Bergeron.
Here.
Our student representative to the school committee, Delia Gauker.
Here.
And so many faces. Oh boy. Okay. So we have Dr. Andre Morgan, Mr. Mark Thomas, Miss Amy Blanchard, Miss Jean Sherburne, Miss Aaron Brown, Miss Lisa Oliver, Miss Aaron Sweeney, Miss Julie Smith, Miss Gabrielle Montevecchi, and last but not least, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dorothy Flaherty. Sorry, it's hard when there's an echo to speak intelligently. But without further ado, with our meeting now called to order and our roll call done, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to put our special student visitor on point to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you don't mind, Nicholas. Would you please lead all of us? Would you mind? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Making you think on your feet today. We are so pleased to have you joining us today. Our first agenda item is actually to recognize you. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Turchek and Mr. Thomas.
Good evening. Tonight we'd like to recognize Nick Hurricane. Nick was recently awarded the Meg Robertson Mobility Award from the Mass Commission for the Blind at the State House. This award recognizes individuals that have used their white cane as a tool for independence. We're so proud of Nick and all he's accomplished, and it's been a pleasure to see him grow into the person he is now and seeing him come along since his freshman year. So looking...
Way sooner than his freshman year. We've been watching for a long time.
You guys have, yeah. So it's been a pleasure to see him grow and really come into himself as a young man, and looking forward to seeing many more accomplishments. So congratulations, Nick. Come on up.
Get you on camera.
Congratulations, Nick.
And
Proud of you.
Very proud. Awesome. Very nice for you as well. A little treat.
Thanks. And we will just take a 3-minute recess to extend our congratulations. Okay, we are back. Always nice to start off with one student, but we actually get to start with two. If you don't mind, Delia, your student report, please.
Thank you. The fall sports season just wrapped up. Many teams had successful playoff seasons. We are especially proud of our varsity boys soccer team, which made it to the Division I quarterfinals, and the boys varsity cross country team that qualified for all states in the first time in 32 years. Additionally, the unified basketball team is very excited for me to announce that they had a great season, winning most of their games and a great turnout at all of them. Tryouts for winter sports will begin the Monday after Thanksgiving. College rep visits have continued this month. Students can sign up for half-hour meetings with them if interested. A financial information seminar was held last week, and guidance will be going into junior English classes this week to start post-secondary planning. Monday was the first day of quarter 2. Report cards will go out on Friday. Over 200 middle school students and their families attended 8th grade open house this month. Over 100 high school students volunteered to showcase various clubs, sports teams, and performing arts groups. And then lastly, coming up this month, we have the Powder Puff football game, which is a girls' flag football game, the 25th annual Thanksgiving game against Salem, and Beverly will be hosting that this year. Other fun activities tied to Thanksgiving are dress-up days, hall decorating, the pep rally, and bridging the gap. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As always, you're welcome to stay. We have some riveting information today, but I know you have a lot of homework as well. I have inside scoop on that. Thank you so much, Delia. Okay. Next on our agenda, we would look to approve the meeting records from our October 11th school committee meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Were there any edits or corrections that we felt needed to be made to the set of meeting records? They're very detailed. I'm not seeing any edits or corrections. The motion is on the table to approve the records. I'm just checking to make sure, Dr. McKenzie, if you had anything. You're good? Okay. So I will go ahead and call the roll call vote. We'll start with Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Yes. Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Visnick is not yet arrived, so I'll mark her absent, and I will vote yes. They are approved 6-0. Next on our agenda is the opportunity for an open forum for resident voice to provide input on agenda-related items or even not agenda-related items. Ms. Bergeron, did we have anyone sign up to address us today? And I don't believe I saw any names signed up on the sign-up sheet. Moving right along, our next agenda item number 6 is items by consensus. We have warrants that are listed in detail on our agenda, letters A, B, C, and D. Is there a motion to approve these?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Generally, we don't have any discussion or questions, just checking the room. I will call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Yes. Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva.
Yes.
Ms. Visnick is still absent, and Rachel, yes, 6-0. Thank you. And now for the main dish, we have the superintendent's report. We did move this up front because we have a lot of people that are joining us this evening to hear about the MCAS presentation, including potentially some of our CISL friends. I don't see anyone joining back online, but go ahead, Dr. Turchek.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so thank you. And this evening I have 2 items on the superintendent's report. The first is going to be an MCAS presentation. Dr. Flaherty is going to lead us through all of the MCAS information from last year. And then I have a brief ESSER update for the committee. Those are the 2 items. So I am actually going to turn it over right now to Dr. Flaherty. Do you want the?
You want me to
Yep,
move the
you just
slides?
take care of your own slides. That will be easier.
Thank you all. I'm happy to be able to share with you our MCAS results from last spring. And if you have questions along the way, you can stop me, or we can take them at the end. I wanted to start this evening by just giving us a little bit of a reminder, as we are in a recovery period from COVID. Sometimes when we get back into the swing of things, we can forget about everything that we've been through for the last few years. And so I thought it'd be important to set the parameters of where we are in the recovery process, which we know can take quite a long time. We're hearing probably somewhere between 4 and 7 years. For some students, it will be faster. For other students, it will be slower. And so I tried to think of a visual image that we can all kind of wrap our head around when you start to think about recovery, because we've never had to do that before, or at least as long as I recall, right? So the first thing that came to my mind is more of when you think about a medical kind of scenario, is last year when we first all came back, everybody was in full time, everybody was back, and we were triaging. We were trying to figure out what was the impact for students, what did they need, who had what gaps of learning, what were families going through, trying to get back into regular routines. So it was really kind of all out, all hands in, just trying to figure out where we were and moving forward. We've now gotten the second set of data, along with a lot of other information that we look at on a regular basis. And I would say we're now moved out of triage and we're more in the intensive care area, where we need to look at our individual patients, we need to give them individual attention, and we need to really focus in on what individual needs are in order to move forward in recovery. We'll then go into the rehab stage, and some of our grades and some of our schools and classes are there now, and some of our students are still back in that intensive care. As we said, it is a progression, and you can slide back and forth within that. But a lot of our students are now in rehab, which is getting stronger, closing the gaps, and getting back to not just where we were in 2019, but ready to move forward and continue growing and getting stronger than ever. And so just as a reminder, 2019 was we had a full test of MCAS in both grades 3 through 8 and 10. 2020 and 2021, in 2020, there were no tests done. In 2021, grades 3 through 8 had a half test, and the high school still had their full administration. Then last year, both 3 through 8 and the high school had a full administration, and in 2023. This will show you in a visual format how we were receiving our data and information from DESE. In 2019, we received both accountability percentile data as well as rankings and information on our progress towards targets. In 2020 and 2021, we did not receive any feedback at all on those. In 2022, we received accountability information, but not information on our progress towards targets, because we were setting a new baseline. And so as you remember, when we looked at last year's data, we went back and looked at 2022 to 2019, but it really isn't a fair comparison. And so 2022 set the new baseline that we would be working from. And then that allowed us this past year, in 2023, to be able to look at progress as well as accountability. There were 1,830 schools in the state of Massachusetts that could have been measured. Of those, 223 schools were classified as having insufficient data, and that's mainly because they're pre-K through 2 schools that don't take MCAS. So of the remaining 1,607 schools, 83% or 1,328 schools were classified as not requiring assistance or intervention, and I'm very happy to say that Beverly Public Schools fell in that category. And there are 279 schools, or 17%, that did fall into the area of needing intervention or further assistance. If you're looking online, or if you're looking at your own child's reports, you will have seen that all of the scoring is done on a 4-point scale. If you received a 0, that meant that your points for your subgroup or for your individual student declined from 2022 to 2023. If it remained the same, you received 1 point. If it improved, but you were below the targets that DESE set for each grade level or each school, then you received 2 points. If you met the target, you received 3. And if you exceeded the target set by DESE, then you got 4 points. Before we start the presentation today, I wanted to put another visual. I'm a visual learner and a visual presenter. So I want you to try to hold in your brain the picture of an onion. Because when you look at MCAS, it is one-dimensional, it's flat, and it's just one snapshot of one day on one test. But it's also, right now, the only data that we have that allows us to have some comparison statewide with other schools and other districts that are like us. And so it is a valuable point, but we want to make sure that we underscore that it is just 1 point. And when you look and think about the onion, and you'll see this as a watermark in the back of the slides, when these are just not an exhaustive list, but this will show you the impact of when we talk about layers. When we look at MCAS, it is one data point that can show us trends that we are moving in the right direction. It can also identify through item analysis areas where we need to look at on standards or curriculum. But most importantly, it is a red flag that allows us to use it to compare and do cross-analysis between a lot of different layers. And the people that are behind me tonight, your principals and the staffs in their building, they take all of this that's on this slide, and when they're working on or working to help a student, all of this is in the discussions that happen when they have their individual meetings or data meetings. And when we look at assessments, we're not just looking at MCAS. We have early screeners for literacy. We're looking at progress towards English proficiency through our access testing. We do benchmark testing 3 times a year. And then you have all of your day-to-day lessons and projects and teacher observations and report cards. So we have multiple points of assessments that we're looking at. Most importantly, the other 2 categories look at our students and their readiness to be able to achieve. And then the last column is the district's responsibility and what are we doing to help our students to achieve. So when you look at students, the COVID impact was different depending on the student or the family and how they may have been impacted by the pandemic. We also know that as you look at the data and as we look at all of our data points, our high need subgroups, and especially special education, low income, and our Hispanic subgroups were more impacted than some of our other subgroups, and their recovery is also slower. But we are focusing in on their needs. And I'm not going to read the whole exhaustive list because many of them you know about, but a couple of them I do want to highlight is when we think back and we say this is just 1 point in time, it's one test, it could be as easy as a really good student that does really well on all of the other assessments that we're looking at, comes in, and then when you get the MCAS scores back, you're kind of bewildered as to why they scored the way they did. And it could be that they had allergies, they might have had a cold, they may have had a hockey game or in a play the night before and came in tired, and so they don't do what you would have expected, and that's why our principals and staff then say, okay, we can't ignore this, let's look back and make sure that all of the other data points are showing that the student is progressing the way they should. Effort also plays into it. If you are taking the test seriously and doing your best, you should be well prepared, and I think that we do a good job of preparing our students. However, if you, we know, because now we can track answers on a test, we can look at scores that come in and it will be 0 across the board because the student never answered a question, and then they just turned it in, and you're not allowed to say to a student, you need to go back and fill these answers in. It can also be stamina. Stamina is probably one of the longer-term things that we're still working at, building back from the pandemic. And it can also be family perspective on MCAS. And then the bottom one is very important, is instructional time, which links directly to chronic absenteeism and the amount of time that students are in the class. If they're with the class and with their teacher, and they're doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, they will be prepared for any assessment that we put our students through. However, there are mental health challenges. There are times that students are pulled out for various services, which they also need, but it takes away from the time that they're with the teacher getting instruction in the content area. And we also have seen, as many districts across the entire country, an uptick in behavioral challenges over the last 4 years. And those behavioral challenges often lead to that student being out of the classroom. So if we reduce instructional time, then we also see a dip in what they're able to achieve. If they're not in school, and you're going to hear starting in January, as a district, we're really putting a real focus on chronic absenteeism, because although we have made great gains forward, we also have too many students that are on track to be considered chronically absent for the year, and it goes to that instructional time. If you're not in school, you're not learning, and then that impacts your long-term achievement. When we look at all of the district pieces, again, we had personnel that were impacted by their families with COVID. It looks to resources and what we're providing for curriculum and instructional materials. We've been, I think, probably one of the positive things that both Dr. Trocheck and I would highlight is that with the ESSER money, we have really put a very strong focus on taking this as an opportunity to upgrade all of our curriculum resources. By the end of this year, we will have updated all of the high school materials. And you saw last year we did a big push on science and social studies. We have foreign language and wellness left to bring forward to you this year. We're also in implementation of a new literacy program at the elementary level and grade 5, and the middle school is undergoing their second year of a pilot, and we will be bringing forward some recommendations to you in the spring for their final part. We're really doing a lot of research in John Hattie's work around teacher beliefs, and that is one of the most important things for student achievement is what a teacher believes a student can achieve. And then the second is what does the student believe that they can achieve for themselves, or if they have a fear of failure and they won't push themselves to those edges to learn more. We also need to look at what are perceived messages that are sent from home and from within the school district around the importance of MCAS. We want to make sure that we're holding high expectations and rigor, which you've heard us talk about repeatedly since we've come back from COVID. That's really the focus of a lot of the work that we're doing with principals and the instructional leadership team. Are we providing professional development and not just expecting people to know what we expect of them? Teacher experience, we've had a lot of teachers that have been hired and working really hard, but are young and just starting out or on emergency licenses, and that has an impact on what is achieved in the classroom as they grow as professionals. Also, we need to look at attendance, because if students are here but the teachers or their paraprofessional or the specialists aren't in, then they're not getting everything that they need within the classroom. And that we're providing the appropriate services that students need to help support them and to close those gaps. So this is really just a way to set up and to keep into mind that when we look at one MCAS score, there's a whole lot of things that are happening behind that. These are just a few bullets from the state report and what they highlighted in their information as it came out. And their findings statewide was that ELA and math show that the slide from 2019 has halted and that recovery is underway in many grade levels and districts throughout the state. Science on the state level remained unchanged with slight decreases in achievement. You'll see that with the exception of fifth grade, who had a very slight decrease, our science numbers were very strong. Grade 3 results are showing, and you've probably heard information if you've been to any DESE workshops or listened to the news. Early literacy is still our key concern, and that we're showing that with the students that may not have attended pre-K or K, we're still seeing an impact in the early grades on foundational skills. It showed that there is still, for some, significant ground to make up to reach pre-pandemic levels in some areas, and that the state results mirrored very closely a lot of the district results. So what happened here specifically in Beverly? I'm going to present the data to you in two ways. One is in a visual format because some people like charts better, and then I will also show you some of the specific numbers. What you want to look for here on the left, this is the Beverly number, and we looked for two things. One, did we increase our scores over 2022? And how are we when we are doing compared to the state averages? And I look at 2% either up or below as kind of mirroring the state average, because you always have some flex, some data where it could go either way. So I use a 2% mark. So anything that is above 2% above the state is solidly above the state, and 2% below is what we would consider solidly below the state average. So here in grades 3 through 8, we are looking at ELA, and we had growth from 44 to 46%, meeting or exceeding expectations, which is positive in two ways. One, it was positive growth and recovery. It is also solidly above the state average. When we look at grade 10, we did have positive growth. It was small, but we had positive growth. And remember that we have elected a new English curriculum that is being implemented this year. And we are just about at that 2%, so we're mirroring the state average there. But we're excited about what we think the focus on our new books and also writing across the content areas will show. And then just to underscore, with any new program, you do look at a implementation gap sometimes where it takes 1 to 3 years before you actually see the positive impact of what you're trying to do, because at the point as you're implementing new materials and new curriculum, it's also a learning period for teachers. So they need a time to master the material, and will get stronger with each year, which also shows in our elementary results. So here we're looking at the numbers of what we just looked at in the charts, and I will point to you that it's a lot of numbers, but I'll point to you the key pieces. If you look about the third green column over where you see the pink numbers indicate all positive growth. So with the exception of grades 4 and 5, we had very strong growth in grade 3, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, and we had small but still positive growth in grade 10, and then the 3 through 8 is an average of all of the other scores. When you look at grade 4, take a look at where they were in grade 3. We were 18 points below where we were in 2019. So even though it is still a loss for grade 4, it is still significantly showing that they are closing that gap. And we will expect that this will go to a positive number next year. This was also an impact of foundational skills. Those were the kids that were most impacted by not having pre-K or kindergarten. And it's the new curriculum that is being implemented, and we're still in the implementation phase. We're going to move on to math. And so when we look at the left, we see positive that we did have continued recovery and growth from 43 to 45%, and that we are solidly above the state average in math for grades 3 through 8 as well. For grade 10, we are very much mirrored and equal to the state averages, and we did have some very solid growth in Beverly from 46 to 50% in recovery. Again, we'll take a look at that third column. The first two columns just give you the 22 data so that you can see where we were. And then you have this column gives you the 2023 data, but this is really the important that we're looking at because this shows you the change in score from 2022 to 2023. So all of that pink indicates positive growth, and that happened in all grade levels except for grade 4. The stars that you see at grades 5 and grade 6, these are grade levels that have surpassed their 2019 levels. So they have fully recovered, and now they're moving on into that stronger than ever category, and we are going to be expecting them to move students further ahead. It also raises the question, though, from a state level, that they've recovered, but overall, we're still below 50% of students meeting or exceeding expectations. And so there is a lot of work to do in math across the board over the whole state. But this is very positive growth to bring us back to recovery. Looking at grades 5 and 8 science, again, 41 to 44, we had positive recovery and positive growth, and we are solidly above the state average when you look at grades 5 and 8 science. Our grade 10 science is some of our strongest, both recovery and strongest separation between the state average. We are very strongly above state average in science. Again, we'll look at this category with the pink, and with the exception of grade 3 that had a slight decrease, but with that slight decrease and you look at where the change was, we had gained last year, we had moved already past where we were in 2019, so this was a small slip, but it doesn't move us below where we were in 2019. We are now at the same level. And then you can see that we had very strong growth in grade 8 and in grade 10. The reason you see NA here is remember that our science changed from the legacy test into the new standard, so there wasn't a comparison yet. We will get a score for that next year.
After 8 years, you think I would know this. Are we looking at just grade levels or are we looking at cohorts?
This is one of the frustrating things for me, is this is not cohort data. This is grade level data.
So we have
if you want to look at
variability.
cohort data, you kind of have to go diagonally, but that's not really accurate. I wish they gave us the data cohort, because then you could see which students and their actual growth. This is looking at last year's fifth grade and this year's fifth grade. It's not looking at students.
Thank you.
Good question, though. So as we had mentioned earlier, we are now moving into being able to get accountability information. And so the kind of pale orange color lets you know, as we had mentioned before, that not only as a district, but all of our schools were rated as not needing assistance or intervention. And then on the blue side, this is our progress towards making the targets that were set by DESE, and you'll see a slide in a minute. It can be low progress, 0, a decline, low, moderate, substantial, meeting or exceeding. And we are strongly in either the moderate or the substantial progress towards meeting our targets. This is looking at specifically at our subgroups, and you'll see here what I was talking about earlier, that even though we're looking at one data point, in MCAS, we then take that to cross-reference with a lot of other assessments that we're doing. And we knew already that several of our subgroups were hit more hardly and are recovering more slowly from the pandemic. And you'll see here that our achievement level scores in grades 3 through 8 ranged from a low of 465.6 to a high of 498.1. Remember, these are averages, so in order to get that, you did have students that will be above and below those scores. In math, we had a range from 470 to 499.5 in our subgroups. And in science, it was 479.5 to 501.9. And when we look at how they're progressing, our low-income students were making moderate progress towards their targets, with their scores being significantly below our all-student aggregate. So that is still an area of concern for us. Students with disabilities made moderate progress towards the targets that DESE sets for that subgroup. And our Hispanic Latino made limited or no progress at the elementary level. Now, when we look at the high school, it's almost a flipped image, where our low-income students and our students with disabilities made limited or no progress towards their targets, but our Hispanic Latino subgroup did make moderate progress. The scores in the subgroups for the high school ranged from an ELA 480.1 to 505.8, in math 479.5 to 501.9, and from science 478.6 to 505.1. And the important part, and the question you probably have about this, is how does that impact graduation when we talk about competency determination? And remember, last year we did an in-depth dive into what those scores really mean, because 500 is the passing score to meet expectations. But remember that they have a big window of students that will still meet and be able to graduate, but they need to do an EPP, which is a plan that the high school puts together for each student in order to make sure that they can graduate on time. With these scores, all of those averages would fall within the category. Using an EPP, they would all be able to meet graduation. That doesn't mean that there aren't individual students that would need an EPP, and the impact last year was that we only had one student that was impacted and not able to graduate, but that was not on behalf of the school not offering enough opportunities, but the student taking opportunity to do the testing. And so we did have one student that they're still working on to come back and take the test so that they can receive a diploma. The next area that we did receive again this year is our growth percentages, and they can range from a growth score of 1 to 19 being very low growth, 20 to 39% is low growth, 40 to 59% is typical growth, 60 to 79% is considered high growth, and 80 to 99 is very high growth. When you look at our scores for grades 4 through 8, grade 3 does not receive a growth score because you need 2 years. You need something to compare it to. So grade 3 doesn't get a growth score, but our ranges, and this goes through all of our subgroups and our aggregates, ranged from 39.8 to 48.4. With our high needs subgroups on the lower end of that, and our all student categories on the higher end of the subgroup growths. And for grade 10, it's similar with 39.9 to 48.6. And for math, you can see there was a lot of consistency across this, 39.1 to 48 and 39.1 to 48.8. So what I would say about this is that the majority of our scores fell within that typical growth, but we look at typical growth in that grade span. 40 to 50 is considered low typical growth. 50 to 60 is considered high typical growth. This is an area that we're focusing on with our instructional leaders and coaches, because while we're in the typical growth, we want to be at that 50-plus category, and that's an area that we're really working on. But this is also an area where those layers really come into play. Because if you're not in school, if you're in school but not available for learning, if you have high absenteeism, if you have a teacher who is on a leave and you have a long-term sub in your class, that's all things that can impact that growth area.
Where we have a number of students that are meeting or exceeding, is it likely that the growth profile can't be as large for them because there's less
There's not
room?
not as much room for where they can go, yes.
Right. And then if there was a student that was there and then had less achievement, that would be in the ones, the
Correct.
twos,
If you have
yeah.
more growth, you can get a bigger score if you have more growth in
Growth,
order to
but
do.
Similarly, you can have less growth.
And then on the flip side of that, one of the things that I will talk about when we're meeting with the instructional team is that if you have a student that is a good student and did really well on MCAS, did well last year, did well this year, but has a low growth score, it also leads to the question, it doesn't mean that we're not, but it leads to the question that we want to ask, are we challenging that student enough? And is the curriculum that we're offering to them rigorous enough? So that we're taking them and making them grow. Because sometimes, I think it's easier to talk about when you look at benchmark data. We'll have students that will take the the fall benchmark, and they're already meeting expectations. So then we need to ask the question, well, how do we push this student? Because they're already there, and they're going to still meet expectations at the end of the year, but we haven't done anything to push them. And so similarly to that, that would affect their growth score within the benchmark as well.
Thank you for that extra explanation.
This is our four-year graduation at the high school. And just remember that this data is a year in arrears. So the data that they're reporting out, even though this is our 2023 testing cycle, is data from 2022, which is just coming out of pandemic. But you'll see that for all students, we declined, and for our low-income students, we declined. But for our other groups, we improved, but below the target, and for our white students, we met the target. Our dropout rate again, is based on 2022. And when you look at our target meeting, we were below, but improved. And we had 3 groups that met the target, and our Hispanic Latino population exceeded the targets. This is a really exciting slide to show, and you'll see that there's only one line here because we don't have enough students in each of the individual categories to break it down into subcategories of subcategories. So these are all of our students that take the access tests, and our high school students did extremely well and exceeded their targets. You can see the growth from 16.7% to 34.3% on moving towards English language proficiency. So that was an outstanding accomplishment for our EL students at the high school. You've heard us talk about chronic absenteeism. Again, you'll hear us talk about it more. We're going to be doing a CISL presentation for it after the holidays, but we're already doing work. We're already meeting with principals who are already doing a lot of work within their buildings on how to close those numbers. Across the state, everybody did really well at recovery from the highest level of chronic absenteeism during the pandemic. So you'll see that we met or exceeded almost all of our targets, with the exception of our students with disabilities at our non-high school. So this is grades K through 8. And our students with disabilities did still improve, but they were below the target. But even with that, when you look at students with disabilities, 25% of that subgroup is still considered chronically absent. We still have work to do, even though we're on the right track and we've done a major reduction, and that's really great. But we also need to lower those numbers below 20% to get to where we were pre-pandemic.
Madam President.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor
Just a
Cahill.
quick one, Dr. Flaherty. The threshold for being deemed chronically absent.
Is
how many
18 days.
18 absences of.
For a whole
180
year.
days.
Yep, it's 10%. And we say you can't wait until you get close to that. So we actually look at 10% of wherever we are in the attendance. So if we're at day 50, day 5 days out, has you on track to be considered chronically absent.
Thanks.
One of the slides got cut out. I don't know where it went. But anyways, the high school numbers were very similar to this, except they exceeded their targets in each of the categories, again, with the exception of students with disabilities, which was flat, didn't fall below, but it didn't improve as well. And so you can see from, if you look at, when we talk from an equity standpoint, our white students, they're only at 14%. The all students, which is all of our categories added together, are at 16.9. But when we look at those identified subgroups that we were looking at, their numbers are still up in the 20s. And so we want to do some real targeted work there. And so now I'd like to talk to you about what each of the schools are doing. I'm not going to read through each of the lists, but I do want to highlight just a couple things on each of them. But what you can see is that the schools are very busy. And when I say recovery initiatives, it's because these are not just MCAS initiatives. These are not targeted on improving MCAS scores. It's targeted at improving student achievement and getting students back on track for teaching and learning. And the first three are bulleted because you'll see those on all three levels, the high school, the middle school, and the elementary. And it's something that we're all being very focused on. You've heard us talk about for several years now, all means all. We're still building the belief system that people believe that all means all. We are working across the board from pre-K through high school to increase rigor and expectations for all students. And that there's a real push on strengthening and providing the curriculum resources, the instructional materials, the professional development, all targeted at strengthening Tier 1 instruction, which is your everyday student, everyday instruction for all students. And for the high school, I also, we'll talk about this at a future CISL meeting because I think that they're going to see that it really has a major positive impact. But they have implemented a flex block this year where students can go and get support and help in the areas that they need. Teachers and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe teachers can either pull them in if they need it, or if students feel that they need to go get extra help in an area or to make up an assessment so that they don't get a 0, they can identify the teacher that they would like to go and see. Is that correct? You'll also see that they've moved to tutoring and trying to do it during the school day because we've tried the tutoring online that, people could sign up for and it did not go well. We've tried after school, before school, and we didn't get the numbers of students we needed. So they're trying to embed that tutoring right into math and ELA and make it more individualized to what students need. At the middle school, you'll see the same first 3 bullets. They also, and you'll hear about this more in coming weeks as well, is they have a partnership with TNTP, which is working on helping to strengthen math instruction and is also providing instructional coaching where they walk through the building with both Lisa and Jim Grocki, our STEM director at the middle school, and then they debrief and they talk about how to strengthen math instruction at the middle school. We are in the process of updating their instructional materials for ELA. We have recently, in the last few years, purchased a new math program, but now with Jim on board, we're getting consistency across classrooms and across grade levels, and that consistency is really making a difference. And there's a focus on professional development, collaboration between teachers, looking at instructional strategies, implementing small group instructions, scaffolding, purposeful planning, so that it's not a one-size-fit-all model, and they're doing a good job with that. We've applied for a grant, and if it works, we will actually have multiple grade levels at elementary. There'll be one at the middle school during April break and one at the high school as well for a math academy to run the week of February and April break.
And math is one area where we've adopted new curriculum within the district, and you
Correct.
talked about the 1 to 3 year transition for teachers and for students to learn new curriculum.
Correct.
Okay.
I would say that although it's 1 to 3 years, and we're now in year 3 at the middle school, without that content leader that we just put in place this year, it wasn't necessarily always consistently used, because you don't have somebody to guide that. They don't have coaches like they have at the elementary schools that can help to do the PLC meetings and to kind of hurdle through the implementation. So I would say, although they've had new curriculum, this is really the first year of building that consistent, rigorous model across classrooms.
I heard you say that consistency, like for math, consistency across classes. Are you meaning different teachers? Is that what you meant by that?
Yes, so that if, depending on who you have for a math teacher, what team you're on, that you're getting a consistent curriculum that's aligned to standards. Not that they have to teach rote, like we're not saying you have to open a book and read a script, but that the standards and the assessments are the same. How you teach it may be different within the classroom, but my math instruction isn't dependent on who I get for a teacher. But it should, when you leave the middle school, it should have a consistent approach so that when you go to the high school, everybody is equally prepared to take on rigorous coursework.
So is that something that's, I would have thought that that is something that would have always been the case. And you're making a statement that we're moving towards that. So what has led that to not be the case?
I think that when you think about this building, when you brought it together, you brought different teachers from different grades, different schools. Everybody had kind of a curriculum that they taught. It's not saying that they didn't teach to the standards, but they had different approaches, or they may have picked out different pieces of the standards to focus on. So how they did it was really kind of different. So you may not have everybody at the same preparation level when you get there. And you brought a very large culture together. And so the first few years, there was some struggles around behaviors and organization that really kind of took a lot of the leadership's priority, because we need safety and behavior first, and mental health. And now we're at a point where the building is really running very nicely. It has a strong culture, and the focus is now at academics and increasing rigor for all students.
Okay,
Does that
thank you.
answer?
Mayor Cahill.
I just have to follow on that, Dr. Flaherty. So how much common curriculum development and planning time do subject matter teachers spend together? I mean, we're looking for consistency in how the curriculum is delivered, so that all the teachers are teaching they're teaching with rigor, and the kids are being brought along. I mean, that didn't depend on some of the things you just articulated. That's something that has long been priority and a value in education and instruction. And so just how are we ensuring, I guess, that all of our math teachers in the 8th grade, all of our
That they have
ELA
time to
teachers in the 6th grade
Yeah.
are delivering the same
So-
to the highest level that we can collectively achieve?
So can
So-
I just jump in for a quick section? Because there's one thing that I think we keep overlooking is that the interruption for instruction that the events of the pandemic held for us and what it did for having to pivot and figure out. We had teachers who were teaching one way, we had the closure, we had hybrid, then we came back and we were rebuilding. So I think then we implemented a new math curriculum in the middle of all of that. So there were many, many interruptions to math instruction, and I think that the middle school was probably, and that's the case across the Commonwealth, that it was the most interrupted. In terms of the call that I came forward last year and we put forward in the budget, a director of STEM at that middle school level, specifically focusing on those two content areas of math and science, that was the first step. There was a schedule change that was made to make sure that we have an opportunity for teachers to do exactly that. So there's been a lot of changes that we've made along the way that have kind of come together for that. The schedule now incorporates common planning time for teachers, for content teachers to sit together and to work together. In addition, Lisa has a schedule of sometimes after, I don't know the number of hours that they have, but that was a very important part of the schedule change that we made, because we did recognize that common time together is really important. And when you're implementing a new curriculum, having the ability to have a content leader come in and do some of that work is important. So I think those are all really good points. I think the schedule change that we made, the adoption of a new curriculum that we have, and the opportunity for the new leadership in the building to take hold and do some of that work has been really important.
The schedule was one of the biggest barriers at the middle school, and they've done a good job of rearranging their schedule to give those teachers that time. And at the elementary, they've had that time, planning time, and the principals have worked hard to make sure that grade level teachers are off at the same time so that they can plan together. And at the high school, we've also made similar increases in the last 3 years on giving teachers more content time to plan together with their directors.
I'm just going to offer some observation, having recent experience in the middle school, is that the cohorts come to a teacher with different sets of needs. So maybe not behavior or things along those lines, but social, emotionally, whether they're ready to learn, whether the class is going to, start right at that tier 1 rigorous academics, or if we need to meet kids where they are. And so I think that the differences between the variability between some of the classes and the teachers also is a real reflection of the cohorts and what needs they're bringing to us.
So if you look back at that first slide when we looked at all the layers, that's a really good point to highlight, because we talk about chronic absenteeism, and that's when you're not here to learn. But we have a whole lot of kids that come to school every day, but because of mental health or SEL or just not being able to, behavioral issues, they can't learn, they're not ready to accept the learning even though they're in the building. So not only do you have to be here, but we need to get you to a point where you're ready to be able to participate actively in the learning environment. And then on to the elementary schools. This is a compilation list. Most of it happens across all of the elementary schools. A few things are individual for certain schools. And so that's why they have 2 pages, and that's because there's 5 of them, so I couldn't fit it all onto one. But you'll see that the first 3 bullets are the same. There's a lot of work on MTSS, which is meeting students at their individual level. This is also where we're working at trying to overcome that hurdle of foundational skills at the early level for numeracy and literacy. We're doing work. I'm sure if you've been in the elementary schools, everybody's seen Gigi. Last year, we had a goal of 80% of the puzzles, and I'm really excited to say this year that we're raising that bar, because the goal is for 80% of all students to finish. So it's not just a school goal, but an individual student goal. We are also providing a lot of work. We just met earlier today around thinking visible thinking in math and getting students back to some of the things that we were really good at pre-pandemic with productive struggle and puzzle talks and working in small groups. And we do a lot of tutoring with the after-school scholars programs. We are looking at both February and April math academies. We should hear in the middle of December if we got the grant that we applied for. A lot of thanks to Julie Smith, who helped to coordinate that for the district. We have purchased, we're in year 2 of our literacy implementation and providing a lot of strong PD. We received an additional $200,000 grant to bring professional development to teachers. All of our teachers are spending a grade level day at Endicott. Our 3rd grade teachers were there yesterday receiving PD on writing. We know that writing is an area of focus that we want to see improve, and that's across the district. And so that has a major focus for our work this year. We're doing a lot of PD and book clubs around some of the these new books that we're looking at around visible thinking in mathematics and for the writing revolution for Natalie Wexler, who was our presenter. We got to share at CISL earlier that we had Natalie Wexler, who is a national speaker and author of both The Knowledge Gap and The Writing Revolution, and she presented on the election day to our pre-K through 8 staff on The Knowledge Gap, which we're trying to move to a more knowledge-based, knowledge-rich approach, which Wit and Wisdom does. And for the high school, she focused on the writing revolution, and then they did a great follow-up using their humanities teachers to work with all of the other teachers in the content areas about increasing writing across all content areas. So we're excited about where that's going to go. We're also using a consistent approach to building fact fluency. This was a person that puts out a fact fluency materials that we purchased through the ESSER grant for all of the schools. Some of the schools implemented on a wide array last year, and we saw very positive returns on that. Some of the other schools that were using other materials used some of the fact fluency, but this year all 5 schools are implementing with consistency that additional supplemental resource. They're also doing a lot of analyzing of the MCAS writing rubric so that kids are going back and editing their work and becoming more knowledgeable of what is expected when they take the test, but more importantly, what we expect when we have a good piece of writing, or if you make a claim, how you need to back it up with evidence. And so the 2 pieces between what they're doing in Wit and Wisdom, Writing Revolution, and preparing them with using a rubric such as what they use for MCAS grading will all help to build those skills and mindset around writing. Any questions? We get flooded with data. Like, we could come and present and I could talk to you about it for days on end. So we tried to give you the high-level highlights while letting you know that we had a lot of positive growth and experiences in the data, and we have also identified where our work lies in front of us. Ms. Abel?
Yeah. With our assessments, how do we make it fun for kids? How do we make it engaging? How do we make them want to give us the data that will help us make better informed decisions? What's the magic? I know some teachers give out lifesavers, but beyond that.
Well, we were at a presentation last week that basically said, stop doing that, people. Stop putting so much pressure and don't, they're saying, we've heard about 2nd graders that are doing posters for 3rd graders and pep rallies and breakfast for everybody before they do the tests and rewards. And the DESE saying, please, school committee and superintendents, please stop doing this. And I may have raised my hand. and tried to say it really isn't us that has created this frenetic atmosphere, it's DESE. So if you would change and not, when you start ranking schools in percentiles, when that's really so difficult, because, take it back to the medical model, right? You take your child to the doctor and they tell you they're in the, 58th percentile for height and weight. When you start ranking schools by a percentile, you could have fractions of a point between, the 50th percentile and the 75th percentile, right? But the newspaper and the general public doesn't understand that, and so they think that because you're in the 50th percentile, then you're really bad, and it could be fractions of a point. So thus, you saw that I did not include percentile rankings because I don't think that gives you an accurate picture of accomplishment. So.
I think that how do we make the kids not feel stressed and feel like, hey, this is just a
Just
normal
another
part of the
test.
day and it's
Yeah.
kind of fun and
I think a big piece of it, honestly, is making sure that teachers hold expectations for kids for everything that they do.
all things.
Instead of just saying, so if we don't, I think if we're very clear about what our expectations are and how they can demonstrate their strengths on a regular basis instead of waiting until it's a summative assessment or a high stakes test, that's the difference. So not accepting half-baked, not so great work and turning that back and saying, no, this assignment is just as important as every other assignment that you do, and we're expecting your best work on everything that you do. I think there's a big difference, because if you only expect them to really give them their best if you in the middle of a high stakes test, then that's a false impression about the importance of putting your best foot forward and of doing, holding yourself and building your ownership of your work. So I think there's a big piece of that. We've talked a lot about beliefs and belief systems and teachers' beliefs and students' beliefs. And, I think holding high expectations for all students and believing that all students can achieve high expectations for everything, not just for MCAS, is, I think, an important piece.
okay. I saw Mayor Cahill and then Ms. Visnick.
I was a little confused at your question, Madam President. It wasn't just about when the kids sit down to take MCAS. It was about the whole yes, no.
I think, going back a year ago, the joy of learning, like we finally got back into our classrooms without restrictions. And how do we make it fun? How do we make kids lifelong learners and understand that measuring data is just as important sometimes to, having extra recess time? I don't know.
Like Dr. Flaherty listed on that one slide, the many different ways in which we assess. So I guess your question, and then hearing their responses, it's about how we teach day in and day out, and how the kids learn, and that they're ready to excel when the high stakes standardized test is put in front of them.
And that they know that it's expected that they do their best with whatever they're doing, and that we don't build it up to be something then it's more than what it is, but that we also want you to take it seriously.
Take it
and a lot of that
seriously,
goes
yeah.
back to the messages from the state around accountability, right? For us, we know that it's going to rank a district, or it's going to send us information that we're going to present at a meeting, and for an individual student or family, that might not have the same impact. So if it doesn't, we don't want it to be like, okay, this is the one time you have to show us the best you've got. We want the best you've got, whether you're doing a daily homework assignment, or if you're doing a writing assignment, if it's a benchmark test, or if it's a standardized test.
And the test day is not the day of dread.
Correct.
I think I saw Ms. Visnick and then Ms. Robinson.
So I know you have on your on the agenda underneath your heading to talk about the conference that we went to, and I would say Dr. Flaherty was much more polite in that particular session than I was, because I didn't raise my hand and I didn't wait to be called upon. We joked back and forth about perhaps needing to be each other's accountability partners, because the guy from DESE said point blank, he put up a slide, what is MCAS and what is MCAS not? And he was really pushing on the fact that it's just a measure at a point in time, and he put up some statistics about how many sample tests are downloaded, and that he doesn't want to see that many downloaded. He doesn't want to see, quote unquote, us putting so much pressure on the children to perform. But as Dot and many other people in the room pointed out, it is a high stakes test. It is a graduation requirement. So you can't say, oh, just walk in the room and let it be like any other day, and let's not bother doing any practice tests, and it's no big deal, when it is in fact a graduation requirement, right? And our group talked a long time about how we should vote on the resolution relative to MCAS testing as a graduation requirement. And so if I were going to pick any session that we went to, and there were a lot of really good ones and some really fantastic keynotes, I think I would talk about this particular session, and I would put the Mr. DESE slides up there, but it has to be an incredible statewide movement away from high stakes testing, and it won't be until the state looks at their accountability, and he said that. And then the commissioner, the Secretary of Education, also spoke to that in one of the keynotes. So I think
they're getting the message and they're hearing the message. So I actually left kind of encouraged that we may see changes in the future.
Okay, Ms. Robinson?
Thank you. So if we want our students, I mean, this is just an offshoot of MCAS, but if we want our students to work just as hard on our everyday assignments, then why are we only putting those assignments at 20% at the high school level?
You mean for what they're going to
For
be
the
rated at?
everyday stuff, formative assignments, formative assessments are only like that. We're kind of, I feel like if we're saying that we don't want, just high stakes, then the stuff we're doing every day is only worth 20% of the students' grades, and 80% of their grades is a high stakes test. So that's something to think about.
We'll bring that back to the high school. My thought is it really shouldn't matter what the percentage is, whatever we give you, everybody should approach it from the same. Yeah.
Okay, are there other questions related to the MCAS data that Dr. Flaherty has presented? Seeing none, I know we have a lot more on our agenda. Thank you, Dr. Flaherty.
Thank you.
And thank you for sending the packet out so we can look at those data points and the pie charts.
I will share these slides with you tomorrow. I just didn't want to break all the excitement before we got to present.
The big reveal. No big reveal. All right. The second item on the agenda that I have tonight is is just an update on ESSER funding. As I have in the last few years, we have been receiving federal funds under the ESSER, and so I wanted to just kind of give you an update of where we are and what that looks like. So when we began, and I think Jean put this lovely bucket slide together to begin with, we received these ESSER funds for the purpose of supporting the safe reopening. That was the original intent when all of the funds came in. And they were in three buckets: academic, social, emotional, and operational. So that's just sort of a reminder to us of what the purpose of the funding was. As you know, we received our ESSER funding in three stages. So ESSER 1 came in. It was $555,939, and that funding was through the FY21 and 22 school years. ESSER 2 came in at $2,119,947, and that funding was used through the FY22 and 23 school year. And then ESSER 3 was the final grant that we got, and that grant was for $4,741,978, and that funding was utilized from FY22, and it ends in FY24. I already have gone through the detail for each one of the ESSERs 1 and 2, and those monies are fully expended and those grants have been closed, but we still have an active grant on ESSER 3, so I'm just giving you the update as far as where we are and what that looks like in our usage. So Jean and I spent some time, Jean Aaron and I actually spent some time breaking down each one of the budget lines and where some of those funds were expended, so you can see whether they were in FY23 or FY24. We had a very small amount in FY22. You'll see that on one of the slides too. So The administrative salaries, this is sort of how we allocated the funds throughout the budget that we submit. The first line is administrative salaries. We had allocated $154,000 to that, and that went to support the program manager for City Connects. The instructional salaries, we had $1,007,819, and we spread that money out over 2 years, FY23 and FY24. We use those funds for classroom teachers, for instructional coordinator, for ELL, for certified specialist teachers, for nurses, and for counselors. Our support staff, we had $230,420, and again, allocated over 2 years, and that supported paraprofessionals and tech support. We have money in the stipend line, $215,000. We spent $60,000 of that in FY23, and we'll be spending $154,000 in FY24. That money really went to support curriculum development and implementation, some of the summer work that was done on curriculum development, some work that's being done outside of some of that. That all goes to that. Fringe benefits, that's a requirement. Whenever we have salaries associated with a grant, we have to support them with the fringe benefits. In FY22, that was a very small amount that came out of the grant in that 1 year. And then in FY23 and FY24, those are the fringe allocations that go with the salaries that we have in that grant. We had in contractual services, $721,000, and in FY23 and in FY24, there's the breakdown. We use that money, that's the contractual services that we have for our contracts with City Connects over the 3 years, as well as the contracts that we have for some of our mental health supports, whether they're in-person mental health supports at the schools or more recently the Cartwheel grant, the Cartwheel program that we put together, which is a telehealth support for our students. We use it for professional development and for instructional services. Some of the partnerships that have been referenced are funded through that. Some of the work that we've done for professional development around our implementation of new curriculum are supported through that. We have $853,205 in supplies. The majority of that went to the purchase of the curriculum materials that we've been referencing, and we'll have continued to expend throughout this year, supporting new curriculum purchases in English language arts, K through 12, science, foreign language, and are up for this year. And I think I heard wellness too, so I believe wellness will also be supported in this, as well as some of the testing and assessment, so the purchase of either early bird assessments that we use for dyslexia screeners for some of our elementary students, and we used a chunk of that money for some translation programs that we purchased and translation services that we supply for our families. And then finally, other costs, we had $1,161,148. Those supported network upgrades. We did some major network upgrades for every school, whether that's inside the building or outside, connecting the outside wireless so that we could have outside learning. Student summer and homeless transportation was a very large cost that we were able to kind of support through this. The technology devices, if we go back and remember when we converted to a 1-to-1 from K to 8, as well as supporting the 9 through 12. So some of the funding was used for that. We used the funding for flooring at the Centerville. We replaced all of the carpeting with a certain kind of floor. I don't know the name of it, but it was a good kind of floor with good flooring. We're using some of that for the outdoor learning, the outdoor classroom at Hannah, for the playgrounds at Ayers, and some of the money is reserved for some boiler repairs that we know that we have to do at a couple of the schools. And so that the money is there. Just a side note, this money ends now. This is the end of the time that we can use it. The very last moment that we can spend this money is in September of 2024. So Jean and I have a very solid plan to make sure this grant is closed and doesn't carry over. There's a lot of concerns. You don't want to give the money, you have to use the money, and it can only be used for certain purposes. So we've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy and made sure that we have carefully planned the use of the ESSER funding so that we have it allocated. One of the reporting requirements to DESE for the funding was to let them know how we spent the money in terms of categories. And so we were required to take a look at this and through percentages, report to DESE. So that's just a percentage breakdown of the categories that the money was spent and how we used it. And so then just, finally, in terms of district expenditures, starting in 24-25, we will no longer have access to the ESSER funds. Just sort of some of the facts about it. Our district got $1,621 per student in total ESSER funding. When the relief funds go away, our district will have 3% less funding to work with. That number is, so if you look over the 4 years of the grants, how much ESSER, the funding that came in, it was 3% of all of our total expenditures in each one of those years. So it's just something to keep in mind. We'll be looking at all aspects of programming to make sure that we're maximizing the value for our students. I do want to admit, and this is something that we've talked about, this is not new news to any of you. All along, we've carried some salaries on ESSER. Knowing that this expenses are going away, it would mean a labor reduction of up to 20 jobs. We're only really, we thinking are at 14 or 15 right now, but all along, you've asked each year, what are we going to do, what's going to happen? And so we've been very clear and concise about which positions we're going to be able to maintain through the end of this school year and which positions would not be carried over. So it shouldn't be, it's not a surprise to anyone, but it is a reduction of what could be up to 20 jobs. So just wanted to put that information out there, and now I'm open for questions.
Ms. Bisnick.
Can you, thank you.
Yep.
Can you speak to where those 14 or 15 are expected? Where
So-
will the hit be?
Yeah, so there's a number of positions across the district. Some of them have been, as you've been noticed when we do enrollments, we had the opportunity at many of our elementary schools to utilize the ESSER funds to kind of in the effort of addressing the recovery for some of our youngest students in early literacy, keeping those class sizes really small. And when I say small, they're really small. And so many of the reductions are just collapsing back into class sizes of 20 or 22, which is the normal class size that we would have. So some of those positions are there. At the middle school, there's a couple of extra reading positions that were put in place to aid the recovery in the recovery process. So some of them are there. One is a nursing position, an extra nurse that we had added as we were doing some COVID relief. A couple of para positions. That we have a couple of extra paraprofessional positions that we had dispatched into different buildings, and a couple of sometimes hall monitors, a couple of hall monitors, extra hall monitors that were in place at the middle and high school, and so those are all the additional positions, and we've documented them along the way, and so.
Dr. Silva.
Can you speak to the City Connects? I know when that was brought on, there was an initial high cost that would then taper.
Well, it's not tapering as fast as no, I'm kidding.
So what I'm wondering is about the tapering.
Yeah. So there's a
the forecast of that.
The structure of the City Connects is a 3-year contract. So we've entered into a contract with them for the professional development services and the supports, and the only recurring cost that will, at the end of that contract, that will come along is the dashboard, the licensing for the dashboard. If you remember, the counselors were all embedded in our appropriated, so we don't carry our City Connect staff on ESSER. Our City Connect staff is embedded within our appropriated budget, and they're part of the appropriated budget. So it's just the contractual aspect of professional development and the licensing for the dashboard that is an expense that's on ESSER. There is a 0.5 position that will be moved into the appropriated budget that we're carrying, but we purposefully designed it so that we would roll it off and into the appropriated budget for next year.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Thank you so much, Dr. Churchek, and I want to appreciate how early some of our principals have to get up in the morning, so this would be a good point if you wanted to head mome. We're going to do the school committee chair report, which is a lot of policy second readings. There is some exciting stuff about MASC. You can watch it on BevCam later at your leisure. But you're always welcome to stay, but BevCam is a better option for my report. Bye. Have a good night. Okay. So our first order of business is actually our second
So the mayor is making a motion that
Second.
we adopt the track changes that were presented. If you'll remember, last time we only actually wanted to add /resident and fix the typo in the word activities on one of these. So they are nearly identical to last month's packet, or last meeting's packet. The mayor has made a motion to approve these red lines. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Okay. Is there any further discussion? Otherwise, I will do a roll call and express my gratitude.
One question.
Yes.
There is a policy, and I apologize because my machine rebooted, but there's a policy, I'm scrolling up to see its number. BCB had no, it wasn't BCB. There was one that had a big comment that said, we need to check with our council. We need to check with, here it is, no, I lied. GBGE says, the school committee should seek the advice of council, deliberate and to determine whether or not to change the following language in the first paragraph. So did somebody in our group, either you or like Dr. Chirocek, talk to our council about the language in that first paragraph? Are you not seeing the text that I'm seeing?
I am seeing the text. I'm just trying to remember. I
Okay.
did not specifically reach out to our council. The note was from the MASC version. About paid or unpaid.
Linda, did you say GBGE?
GBGE.
GBGE, domestic violence leave.
So I think that deals with our contract. I don't think that's a paid leave.
Right, and I don't think our language in that section changed.
Right.
So I don't see a track changes. So it makes more sense if you're telling me that that note is from MASC.
Yes.
So I don't think it's applicable to us because we didn't change that portion of our policy. That was part of what confused me.
Okay. Yes. So we will remove the note from MASC.
Okay. Then I'm all set.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So with that friendly amendment that we remove the note as well as the red line, so it's not stricken in this version, but. Any other questions? Should we vote on these individually or as a group? As a group. Okay. And Mayor Cahill, you agree your motion was as a group?
Most definitely.
Okay. So we will remove that note. Okay. Let me call the roll. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. It's a yes. Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Visnick,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel, yes. Okay, I will work with Ms. Bergeron to make sure the edits, as we've agreed, will be part of our policy manual as of today's adoption. And next on our agenda, we will be talking about some upcoming meetings and dates. I actually will likely drop this in an email right after the meeting because we have a lot in the next couple of weeks. I did want to just put a reminder out that we are participating in the attendance working group. Dr. Flaherty had mentioned it a few times how important attendance is, and there is a regional effort underway. I have been attending. If any other member would like to attend, it is a virtual meeting that is at 8 a.m. on a Friday. It's usually the second or third Friday. I think the next one is the 17th with the holiday weekend. We moved it up. And that we also had a request from Dr. Chorchek to set a meeting time with her for priorities leading up to our budget discussion. So that also should be occurring either on the 17th, 20th, or 21st. We also received an invitation. I hope everyone was able to get the attachment from our students. It's the Bridging the Gap ceremony. I've had the pleasure of attending a few years. This is actually the 40th anniversary. I'm unable to attend this time due to a work commitment, but Ms. Flaherty is requesting RSVPs. If you intend to join, it's at 10:30 a.m. and there is a light lunch served afterwards with student leaders. We have the holiday parade, weather permitting, on November 26th. That touches off from the Beverly High School parking lot. Generally, we meet around noon and touch off at 1 p.m. to walk down Cabot Street to City Hall, where we are invited to go onto the viewing deck and watch the rest of the parade that is behind us. The rain date has been changed to the 10th, just for planning purposes. Financial forecasting is getting into a good swing. There's been a lot of confusion over the dates and times and locations of the meetings, but I think they are now settled. November 28th will be the first meeting, and as chair, I'd like to recognize that we are appointing Dr. Silva and Ms. Visnick to be the representatives from the school committee. We also have our citizen representative to Finance and Facilities, who will continue on as our citizen representative. That's Ms. DeGeneva. Okay. Be Healthy Beverly is another thing the school committee participates in. That is a monthly meeting. It's the last Wednesday of the month. It's a hybrid option. Most people are now meeting again in person at the YMCA, but they have the ability to have virtual participation for others. That's at 7:30 a.m. on the last Wednesday of each month. So our next one is coming up on November 28th, if anyone is interested. If not, I generally make it every once in a while. I forget to hit the Google Meet, but that will be happening. That's also the day that we will have our Finance and Facilities meeting at 6:30. I do have a question for the body. If we want to allow Finance and Facilities to have a larger allotment of time, we could move a couple of the agenda items that might have been on the Committee of the Whole to our next regular school committee meeting. And we also have the option to post Finance and Facilities as a Committee of the Whole if there's a topic that would need more time. I feel like that meeting has been rushed a lot. We can get back to that. We have a couple weeks. We'll be posting it next week, but.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that we got through, well, you'll hear my report in a minute, but we got through more than half of the policies that we needed to get through. And we kind of briefly talked about whether to push our start time earlier. But I feel confident that we spent a lot of the meeting kind of setting the stage. So every other meeting should be able, when we deal with policies, should be able to go faster.
Okay.
And so we have a smaller number of policies and we're already going to be able to hit the ground running. So relative to policy work, I was not going to ask to start any sooner. That said, we didn't do a lot of our normal work, and we haven't really talked about the agenda yet. So maybe we could split the difference and take 15, not go any earlier, but if you want to give us 15 more minutes on the end.
So the Committee of the Whole could start later, or we could move some of those items to our regular meeting. Okay. Just keep that note in mind. I mean, I think many of us will be here anyway for the Finance and Facilities, but we'll keep you apprised of whether the Committee of the Whole will meet slightly later, if at all, that night.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. Again, December 5th and December 12th are additional financial forecasting meetings. We have received an invite from Miss Andrews, Miss Julie Andrews at the high school, inviting us to the Scholars Breakfast. That is on December 7th. It's early, 7:15 a.m. to 8:15 a.m., and that recognizes a bunch of the academic accomplishments. We have our regular school committee meeting on December 13th. It's an even-numbered month, which means our Student Advisory Council will be joining us at 6 p.m. in here. That is not broadcast on BevCam. Then we have CISL at 6:30 and our regular committee meeting at 7:30. And then December 20th is our Finance and Facility and Committee of the Whole. We may also have the need to schedule some subcommittee work, whether it be for policy or for negotiations. So we will keep everyone apprised and look to make sure we have participation. I had put an agenda item for our organizational meeting. I know the mayor had expressed an interest in looking to have something other than what we posted on our meeting schedule, and we will table that until we have clear indication from our city clerk when the inauguration will be happening, and we'll also be in touch on that. Okay, so lots of dates. I'll just paste that into email so everyone has a kind of a chronological order of all of those meetings we have upcoming in the next 8 weeks. I wanted to offer an MASC-MASS conference 2023 recapitulation. I really enjoyed this year, maybe more than any of the other years, maybe because I wasn't our delegate, but I attended a number of very informative and thought-provoking sessions over the 3 days. They were a solid 3 days of really high-quality opportunities to learn and to share experiences with other committee members. The first one I attended was Leading in the Age of Climate Change. It was set to talk about net zero schools, and then it turned a little bit to zero net schools, which was very exciting. The focus was not only on carbon-friendly technologies and energy purchasing decisions, but how to apply for funding to develop cost avoidance as well, and to actually produce power and make yourself a little power company. So I know that there's a lot of different recs and things, but there were some really interesting ideas about growing produce and doing all these things on site. It was pretty cool. The 2 case studies that presented were Watertown and Worcester, and we should keep an eye out for them because they have some very exciting projects that are coming online very soon. So this Zero Net, which includes on-site generation, is something that we will need to think about as we have capital projects that may need to be addressed. The Massachusetts School Building Authority is actually implementing a lot of policies that could affect the availability of funding for schools, and it's for instance, no longer funding emergency repairs for the conventional fossil fuel-based boilers. We need to be in a place that we are looking at HVAC systems that will meet the policy goals over the next 25 years. There is a lot of forethought and legislation that's being put together. So for instance, heat pumps are, a new reality. They actually had some good examples that cities need to start thinking about their decarbonization capital plans, not just capital plans. For instance, Evoke Tech that offers a culinary program needs to stop using natural gas and propane for cooking because induction cooking is really the skill set that our students now will need in the future. So it was just really thought-provoking. I wanted to share that Watertown and Worcester are doing some really exciting things and that we should be really actively thinking about things like roof replacements with solar. There are many funding options that may be coming online that we can consider, and that the footprint for solar for making it make sense is getting more and more creative. They've really changed a lot of the things that they can do. And also all building projects must be at least LEED Silver, which is what we did here. But ultimately, there are so many more layers above that now available. The second one I went to was interest-based bargaining in challenging times, and that really focused on how now more than ever it's in everyone's best interest to focus on what's important and how to collaboratively solve problems. Using professional facilitators versus an attorney or attorneys can allow for curiosity and attentiveness to all ideas in the room and help us make sure all voices are heard. This session Talked a little bit about some of the playbook items that teacher associations might be using to call for strong arm tactics. But they reminded us in the room that sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. That positional bargaining may or may not work at building relationships and trust. So common interest is shared in the IBB model. The district does not want to lose quality teachers over compensation, for instance, and teachers want to feel valued and fairly compensated for their worth. So there's a net and, not an either or, that we can all learn from interest-based bargaining. The other sort of takeaways are that cities are constrained by Proposition 2.5 and their net new growth revenues. And whereas schools are the largest segment of a city's budget, inside of the school budget, salaries are the largest segment of a school budget. So the last reminder from that session was really that remembering of the common goal of student achievement is really where you need to focus your conversations. Another session I attended, and I'll go a little bit faster, sorry, building bridges. This was about constructive listening dyads, and it's centered out of a program from UCal Berkeley that they actually are providing to anyone who's interested that attended the conference for free. I can extend it to anyone here. I just made sure my access worked today, and it does, and it's pretty simple to sign up. This topic was really about how both bridging and belonging are related yet different activities that we do in our school communities and in our communities in general, and how we can build both bridging and belonging into our curriculum. These are remedies for marginalization, inequity. They help to build inclusion and justice in the work we do. And they are centered around focusing on our shared humanity, even when our opinions may be different. And that we need to frame our responsibilities as a school committee and as a community around working to understand versus working to persuade. So I'm really excited to take the program. I haven't, jumped into the whole coursework yet, but some of the takeaways just from the overview are about building humility into our daily practices, about not having all of the right answers or even having the truth. So when, for example, we say, what's best for kids, there can be many different answers about what's best for kids. There are so many different right answers, and we need to leave room for them all. So really good session. Let me know if you want the UCal Berkeley link to the program, and I can distribute that and show you how to sign up. We went to the keynote dinner with Commissioner of Education Jeff Riley. Period. That's it. Social emotional learning for equity was an excellent presentation. I cannot do it justice, so I'll just summarize that social emotional learning is the plate. It's not a serving or a side dish, and that equity and DEI is the table. Searching for your superintendent is one that I attended, not because I want Dr. Chorchek to go anywhere, but I'm sure at some point she would like to retire. And so this was a really valuable session that impressed upon me the need to consider that we need to grow superintendents. We need to encourage our talented resources within the district to want to grow into a superintendent's position. And the reasons, there are so many, not only because superintendents are hard to come by, but there's actually measurable disruption to student learning when you have transitions. And so it's just a reminder that school committees can appoint superintendents. They do not need to do a search, and that we should be very thoughtful and deliberate and making it known that in our district, we encourage people to take the steps that would be required to build themselves into a superintendent. It's possibly something that we could have MASC do a retreat with us and talk a little bit more about that. But I just want to convey that message that the sentiment coming out of the conference is that we really need to build superintendents. I followed that session with another interesting one about hiring staff in a competitive environment. These are non-student facing positions that our district needs to operate, and how we need to think as a district how to provide competitive advantage, since salary is not a realistic or necessary component of hiring. We need to consider all the benefits and even just kind of advertise ourselves as a great employer. So we need to always be thinking about schedules and work locations and providing employees with opportunity for ownership and creativity that positively impact job satisfaction. Think about ways that we can provide work-life balance as well as show tokens of our appreciation often. The next one, I just want to note, we did speak with the secretary, he spoke to us. We spoke back a little bit. Secretary of Education, Pat Tutwiler. He's been in the role for 10 months, and he brought a lot of good insights, started a lot of conversations. I think we'll be hearing a lot more from him. And he was introducing the keynote speaker and the main dish for the conference, Dr. Darnisa Amante Jackson. I can't do justice, but I think just a couple of the takeaways is that we don't fear change, we fear loss is the way that many of us operate, and that there is this scarf threats. There's always the threat to status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. And she illustrated how students, teachers, and materials are all surrounding our instructional core and why belonging is so important. Specifically, she emphasized how students must be heard and loved to actually receive the instructional core. She outlined how MCAS scores cannot really show that students are feeling loved and heard for 4 or 5 years. It's a change that takes time. Great transformations take even longer. And she also emphasized how good Tier 1 instruction is vital to our districts, and that we then from there build differentiation, scaffolding, and accommodations. She highly recommends we don't teach to the middle. She said that the MTSS structure also heavily relies on family and guardian engagement. And I think that was a common theme across all of the different sessions I attended, is how do we get our families and guardians more engaged with our efforts so that we're more successful for the students. Again, too much to share here, and possibly a retreat topic that we might want to consider. On Friday morning, we had a really scary presentation about artificial intelligence. It was a little bit humorous, where the speaker, Justin Reich from MIT, had actually given a challenge to ChatGPT about telling him the school mascot for MIT, which is the beaver. And ChatGPT came up with this whole long story that was fake. It had Beaver Day and the statue and shenanigans and a whole bunch of things that don't exist. But the lesson he was saying is that his students' first reaction to what ChatGPT said was, "Oh, I wonder why I wasn't invited to that," rather than question, is it real or is it fake? So the topic is whether we should cheer or fear artificial intelligence, and the takeaway is that there is some room for using it. It's going to be a skill that our students need to learn to deal with. That the information landscape is now flooded, and it is much more difficult for students and adults to filter, to figure out what is real and what is a deep fake, basically. So anyway, as if I didn't have enough, I went to a session about current trends in collective bargaining. This was a session led by our own school committee attorneys. It outlined the basic rules of open meeting law and traditional bargaining, and emphasized that every discussion we have in a collective bargaining be in good faith and on topics that are actually bargainable, meaning things within the purview of the school committee. So a reminder to conduct those sessions in executive session if positional bargaining approaches and fewer than a quorum of the body can participate. Nothing is agreed until the formal votes of the school committee, and school committee always retains managerial rights. So those include the number of staff, the type of curriculum, whether or not we remove positions, and the unions always have, they can bargain impact, but they can't necessarily make managerial decisions. One of the takeaways that we will work with is the idea of scattergrams to show data in much more easy to understand ways where we can compare apples to apples and look at our comparable districts and our competitive districts. Another takeaway is that you can't mix negotiations across different units. You must choose one at a time. And again, I'm not going to share a ton of this in open session, but there was just a lot of takeaways from that particular session. Went to a chair chat, which on face value could have gone really wrong, but it was a wonderful opportunity to speak with chairs from other districts about what's working, not working in the way that they run their meetings and the way they run their committees. A lot of great ideas coming out of that. A lot of groups are actually creating outreach working groups or communication or engagement working groups so that would be a subcommittee to the school committee that helps work with administration to figure out ways to reach our parents and guardians where they are. There's also some groups doing a school committee or superintendent office hours. In many of those cases for the school committee, it's listening only. So they go to a coffee shop or I think it has to be a public building. You post it as a meeting, but school committee generally will just listen, or the superintendent will just listen. Could be interesting. We talked quite robustly about public speak at our meetings, whether to offer it, what to do correctly, and they encourage a reminder be made with those opportunities that student names, student records, employee personnel files, and reputation should not be discussed. I'm actually looking forward to receiving Framingham's verbiage. We might update just the way we have posted it on our agenda so that people are very clear about that. Learned about the student rep to our school committee having now a formal MASR group, MAstudentreps.org. They actually have an official handbook, much like we do for the school committee, and I believe the superintendents do. And then there was a lot of discussion about mission statements and making sure each of us remembers what our mission statement says, making sure it reflects the values of our current composition, and making that more publicly visible. So I know Dr. Trocek often puts it in her slide deck, but it might be something you see on the agenda or on the back of our nameplates or somewhere so we can be reminded what our mission actually is. And then the last one that I attended actually with Ms. Visnick, we kind of divided and conquered for most of the event, but the last one we attended is working effectively with different personality styles. It was really fun. We won't share everything here, but it's an engaging activity and something we might want to invite MASC to do with us in a retreat setting at some point. Ms. Visnick, do you want to share any of your...
I want to share that the title of that last session that we went to together originally is actually in the book as, quote, dealing with the most difficult people. And Jim Hardy taught it, and I really like him. So it was that was a good session, and I will second what you said. And we talked about it on the drive, that this year just seemed like it was off the charts better than all of the previous years. And I think, last year maybe was the only year I didn't go because I was just off my knee surgery. And so I was kind of thinking maybe I appreciated it more this year because I hadn't gone in because I missed a year, but the delegate assembly made up for the goodness of all the sessions. And what I'll say is that just on the surface, like we voted to say, can we talk about all of these? Do you want to hold any? Right? And you vote in a big pack. Literally only one resolution passed without a hold. Only one of the 8. And of the remaining 7, 4 of them, after tremendous amount of discussion and debate, were tabled. And some of those votes had to be by count. They had to count the tabling vote, which is how divided the room was. So 3 of the resolutions did pass, 1 failed, and 4 were tabled. And on the surface, I mean, look, we all came to a pretty easy agreement on 7 of the 8. I mean, easy sneezy, right? And we really debated that one. I was waiting for that one to be debated in this room, and it took a long time to get to that one. And it was number 4. I said, we're in trouble, right? So, I think for... there was a session that I took a lot of notes on because even though it's a regional school district, the Blackstone Valley Regional, they have 12 schools, and any given one school has something unique. Like one of the schools had a welding class. One of them had some kind of a health class that they had used their ESSER money to buy this table that is like an anatomy, like operation, but on like a real scale. and so they probably only teach 1 or 2 anatomy classes themselves, and so it's like an extension of the After Dark program. And so they're collaborative of these 12 schools. They open up either after school or on the weekends. All the superintendents met, and they said, kind of brought to the table, this is the thing that I have that nobody else has. And then the other children from the other districts can sign up and then attend a class. They pay a stipend to a teacher to teach an extra class. Again, maybe after school, maybe on a weekend. They set up field trips so that people could go look and hear about it and say, do I maybe want to sign up for that class? And then they have agreements relative to, okay, if I'm going to come to your district and take a class, you're probably going to give me a grade, but maybe my district is only going to list it as a pass-fail. So all kinds of interesting combinations, as you might imagine, because there's 12 schools participating in this thing. But it really was how to give way more children an opportunity to do something on a career pathway, where at a scale where each school had like one thing to offer. But by sharing, they really did right by a whole bunch more children. So that was one of my highlights.
Thank you. Knowing that we have an executive session and the lights do turn off, I'm going to rush really quickly. The citizen representative primer was included in the packet. I did make a few clarifying statements in this, as well as some edits. I just wanted people to be aware of the changes. I think primarily our citizen representatives wanted to have better clarity about their responsibilities. So one of the items is they do take an oath at the city clerk's office. Wanted to make sure that was readily available to them. And also wanted to make sure it was clear that one of the representatives from the Finance and Facilities would be selected to put to the City Council's Financial Forecasting Subcommittee. I don't know if anyone had any concerns. Mayor Cahill.
Yes. Excuse me, I know you and I have talked about this, and we've been doing some review of city boards and commissions. Is there a requirement that someone be a U.S. citizen for these types of posts? We got a lot of family members who are, non-citizen residents whose kids are in our schools.
Right.
Or even if not,
So
residents in the community.
that's something I think we need to look into what the state statute says about the role of citizen representatives. I did not change any of the qualification statements that were in our original primer. And that is citizen representatives should be a U.S. citizen of voting age. It doesn't say registered voter, it just says of voting age. So I did have some of those same questions and concerns. And if you'd like to direct me to ask our attorney or even the city solicitor to get a little bit more clarity on that, I can do so.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions or concerns? Okay. The real reason for bringing this forward, besides, just adding a little bit of clarity, is to make a call to the public as well as to encourage our school committee members to think about constituents that reach out to you, that have questions, that seem to be interested, because we will be accepting through the superintendent's office applications to join the body in January when we reorganize. So now is the time to make the advertisement that these positions exist, explain a little bit about the roles and responsibilities. Hopefully the primer does some of that, and encourage people to apply. We did change our policy that we pretty much have a minimum number. We don't have a maximum number, and we always like more voices at the table. So thank you for that. Next, I'd like to quickly go through our standing committee reports, finance and facilities first.
Okay, the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities last met on October 25th. We spent the bulk of our meeting talking about policy, including setting the groundwork. I mentioned that earlier. So our committee recommends approval of the September 2023 gifts to schools totaling $325. That's itemized on your agenda.
I'll second that. Yes.
Yes.
Camera's off and we can't hear you now. Sorry. I'm gonna circle back. Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva,
Yes.
Mary Business,
Yes.
Virginia West, Dr. McKenzie. Oh, she's lost our sound.
Your microphone, please.
I can hear you very.
Rachel, your microphone's not on.
She might not be able to put it on.
Oh, I'm forgetting the microphone. It's my fault. I'm sorry. But I'm seeing your speech to text in the bottom of the window, and you have said yes. So that passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends approval of the attached Beverly 2024 DESE grants totaling $234,200.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Okay. So, Ms. Bisnick, Mayor Cahill, are there any questions or concerns? Okay. Roll call vote. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. She says yes. Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Bisnick,
Yes.
and Ms. Abel, yes.
Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends approval of the attached non-union hourly rates revision for custodian substitutes only.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Any questions? Roll call. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. She says yes. Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
Ms. Bisnick,
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes.
Finance and Facilities Committee managed to get through the list of policies that are here. They're being brought forward. They're in your packet for a first reading. And on our November 29th meeting, they'll be presented for a second reading and will require a 2/3 vote to be approved. They're all from Section D, which is all about fiscal management. One is on budget deadlines, budget planning, grants, proposals, and special projects, authorized signatures, bonded employees and officers, fiscal accounting, and reporting. Okay, so those are all in your packet. They're just riveting. Try to, really get in there and rip them up. And our next meeting is 2 weeks from today after the Thanksgiving break on 11/29. And as of right now, we are scheduled to start our meeting at 6:30. That's the normal time. We are not planning on starting early. But Jean and I, the brain trust over there, haven't fully worked that out just yet.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the track changes version. I think they're pretty clear, and hopefully if there are any questions, people will come prepared with any revisions that they might want to amend these Section D items. Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life. Quickly, if you would.
Thank you. So the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life has policies for a second reading and vote. So the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life recommends the attached policy, Section E, EBB, first aid for a second reading and will require a formal two-thirds vote of approval by the school committee.
Thanks. Were there any concerns or questions before we entertain a motion to, was that a motion to approve?
Yes, that was a motion to
okay.
approve.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or concerns before I call the roll? Okay, Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza? Yes. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes, 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, and the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life recommends Section J, JRA, student records for a second reading. Make a motion for vote.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Are there any questions or concerns? I'll call the roll. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza? Yes. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
Ms. Abel, yes. 7-0. Thanks. And then you had met this evening as well, and you will next meet in December.
That's correct.
Okay. Running that along, the negotiating subcommittee has not met since our last meeting, although we do potentially plan to meet. We have not received a demand to bargain from our units A, B, or C yet, to my knowledge. I don't know if there's a mailbox somewhere I need to check, but policy review subcommittee also hasn't met since our last meeting.
Correct, but we need to meet, and I had not scheduled a meeting, waiting to see what would happen with our election outcome, because Ms. Coelho's on policy, valued member of our policy subcommittee. So I now need to schedule a meeting because we need to look at policy IMDC, accommodations for religious and ethnic observations, in respect to the conversation we had at our retreat about possible calendar changes.
Thank you
So
for
that'll
that
be
reminder.
upcoming. I have
Okay.
to pick a date.
Okay. Thank you so much for the subcommittee's work there. Are there any communications from school committee members that need to be brought to the table?
I have a quick one.
Okay.
I went to the Centerville PTO meeting yesterday and talked about the potential calendar changes for next school year, and then I got an email about it, and it's very thoughtful. It was a very thoughtful email, and this person said, I'm wicked summarizing and not doing it justice, but they basically said, I'm not Jewish, but I have a hard time with the fact that you might remove Yom Kippur off the calendar, especially in light of all the anti-Semitism, the rise in anti-Semitism. So I think that the more we talk about the potential calendar changes, the more we get ahead of that. The person was also concerned about needing to hire more subs, that staff might want to be out if we take a given day off, or we'll put it back on the calendar that they used to get off. So, yeah, I think that's, one meeting. Well, I already got one email. So I think that we all need to maybe make a concerted effort to talk about that when we go to our respective PTO meetings or are hanging out in coffee shops or whatever else you mentioned earlier, Ms. Abel.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Robinson.
Yes, thank you. So I had a communication from someone in Ward 5 who was questioning about our use of our rental policy for public school buildings in terms of renting to churches. So I checked in with Dr. Trocek, and I was told, I had thought this anyway, that we offer our spaces for rent, and have a process in place, including a rental agreement, and we have to abide by non-discriminatory policies for any group that requests to use our spaces. So we welcome all community groups into our public buildings. So I think it's important for people to know that.
Okay. Is that it? Okay, the last item on our agenda is a motion. The chair will move that we vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purpose number 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose number 3, as a reminder, is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the AFSCME and other units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. This does require a roll call vote, which
need a
we also
second.
require. So that's a second. Okay, so the chair has made the motion. Mayor Cahill has seconded. Roll call, Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Coelho,
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Yes. Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Silva,
Yes.
and Ms. Wisnick.
Yes.
And Rachel Abel, yes. It is 9:55 p.m. The chair is stating that we have voted to move to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purpose number 3, and we will not be returning to open session. Therefore, BevCam, we thank you so much for broadcasting us this evening. We will be moving off the public platform into our closed session.